This episode of Mob Psycho 100 has to be one of my favorite, if not my favorite episode of the entire series so far. It's legitimately insane how a series like Mob Psycho that is often very crazy and over the top can feel so grounded and depict something like the emotions and internal struggle Mob was going through towards the end of the episode so well. Especially considering how those feelings are so unfamiliar to us, the audience, and everybody surrounding Mob. However, that's not a new thing. Bones always delivers with Mob Psycho in that sense, but there was something about this episode that really made you feel what Mob was going through. And I think something that may have played a large part in this were not only the themes of the episode, but also how these themes were presented and the overall structure of the episode itself. So this episode tries to portray or communicate to the audience a couple of things. The first being Reigen, and how yes, he is a very fine mentor to Mob, but is still in fact human and susceptible to the occasional fuck up. And the second thing being the misuse of the supernatural. For example, throughout the episode, Reigen and Mob take on plenty of jobs, as business is doing well due to the website Reigen put up at the end of last episode. However, as the opening narration points out, some of these jobs aren't worth taking, meaning they're not worth Reigen and Mob's time, or the potential income of a job isn't worth Mob or Reigen getting hurt. But Reigen doesn't realize this, as all he sees is how well his business is doing, and you can't really blame the guy, seeing as how this is as much business as he's ever had. Though as predicted, this leads to some rather uncanny jobs, some of which Reigen himself doesn't want to take, but always eventually does. The first instance of this is, well, the first job we see in the episode where the guy wants Reigen to sell him a curse or wants Reigen to curse somebody for him. And as I mentioned before, this is one of those jobs Reigen doesn't want to take but eventually does, even if it's all a scam. This is also both the first time this episode where we see someone wanting to abuse the powers of the supernatural and Reigen fucking up. I gotta say, I really enjoyed Mob's perceptiveness here. He references last episode where we learned just how much of an effect one's belief can have on the supernatural, as it did with the Dragger. This is also the first time we see Mob voice his opinion and mild disapproval of what Reigen just did. And while Reigen does notice how what he just did could have bothered Mob, his phone ringing or the potential of another job is enough to pull him away from his concern for Mob. And so we continue with the next job, where a woman believes she is being haunted but is actually being stalked by her neighbor via supernatural out-of-body experiences. Yet another misuse of the supernatural. A lot of things were done beautifully here. Animation, the attention to detail with the stalker's body language after being found out, and even the fucking subtitles. But by the end of the scene, Mob is genuinely confused. Mob doesn't understand the change of attitude in the client once she finds out that it wasn't a spirit stalking her, but a living person. You see, Mob isn't able to understand people's fear of the supernatural, as to him, well, for starters, he has a harder time dealing with humans, and also, spirits are simply a part of his world. He's used to them. Mob is noticeably flustered by this, and Reigen notices, but yet again, he messes up, and his concern for Mob is taken away at the chance of another job. The bullying scene in and of itself really felt out of place. My first time watching this episode, I thought, really? Why here? It was only after my second watch of the episode that I realized the importance of this scene and why it was placed here, as without this scene, the final portion of the episode wouldn't have had as much impact. So it's here where we see Mob almost get mugged, and as we know, Mob doesn't like using his powers against people, regardless of how scummy or bad they may be. Which leads to Mob being saved by, well, everybody. And it's here where Mob is told that it's okay to use his powers, that it would do society a favor for him to use his powers and put these kids in line. But the thing is, Mob doesn't care about what society thinks. Mob wants to find his own way of dealing with these problems without using his powers. Also, it doesn't help Mob at all for the people closest to him to be encouraging him to do something he does not want to do. Mob considers using his powers against humans as bad or wrong, and in this case, it's as if his friends are encouraging him to do something wrong, bad, or what could be considered a misuse of the supernatural. Not only that, but encouraging Mob to do something he considers wrong is a complete disregard of his feelings, something Mob has been expressing throughout the episode and every time so far has been ignored. And it's with these circumstances in mind that we proceed to the final portion of the episode, where Mob is confronted by 3 harmless spirits. It's funny, right, how the least threatening people we meet this episode is a group of spirits. Anyway, yet again, Mob is pressured and put into a situation that only he understands. Mob wants to do good with his powers. He does not want to cause pain or harm with them. However, both getting rid of the harmless spirits or not getting rid of the spirits and ignoring the customer's genuine fear would be betraying that very purpose. And once again, Mob voices his opinion, and it's ignored. He's told by the customers that his feelings don't matter, which arguably is way worse than anything the previous bullies could have done. Dimple tries to instigate something, and Mob's final hope, Reigen, takes the customer's side. Mob is genuinely alone at this point and is once again being pressured to do something he considers immoral. Reigen luckily catches on, realizes his mistake, and as per usual, handles the situation with the utmost class. But the issue still stands. Just how far can Mob go? A curse? Or 2? Using his powers to create a cult? And what if he does go off the deep end and start wanting to use his powers for evil? Would anybody be able to stop him? Would anybody care? Mob's already broad world just became that much more broader as he comes to the realization that the intentions of humans and spirits aren't as black and white as he initially thought they were, giving him a lot to think about. So I'm curious to see what Mob's dilemma this episode was a setup for, and I'm curious to see how the occurrences of this episode affect Mob in the long run. But I'm even more curious to read any thoughts you had about this episode. Talk about what you liked, what you didn't like, what you got from this episode, or anything I didn't mention in the video. Also, if you're a manga reader, let me know how you felt Bones adapted these chapters. I appreciate all comments, so feel free to leave one whether you answer any of the questions I asked or start a discussion on anything you deem worthy of discussing, whether it be related to the episode or anything I said, and I'll reply whenever I can. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to follow me on Twitter for updates or if you just want to interact with me. And yo, there's this chance that if you're watching this video right now, you're not yet subscribed to the channel, so here's what you're gonna do. Create an account if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel by hitting that red button. You're also going to hit that bell because recently, not many of you guys have been getting subscription notifications. So make sure you hit that bell, that way you don't miss a video and can continue watching Mob Psycho 100 and many other series with me. And with that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.